Songs and Hearts, Chapter 15. Book 1 of the Biella series. First chapter, just one word. Previous chapter, Heila's story. Can you relish the dream? Biella said. They had left the sky garden and were making their way across the crown of the giant tree, heading towards the mountain. Said Ursula, smiling. She was prompting Biella for more. Just a thought that crossed my mind. Biella smiled back but did not elaborate. Her smile broadened even more as she spotted Eluminia coming towards them. Oh, excellent, she said. Eluminia, smiling joyfully, hugged Biella. Then hugged Ursula, and without pause or reflection of any kind hugged Heila. Biella made the introductions, adding a measure of explanation. Eluminia, this is Heila. She offered us friendship, which Ursula and I both wholeheartedly accepted and returned. Eluminia took a thoughtful and deep look at Heila and without hesitation said, well, then I too am your friend. Anyone Biella accepts and befriends on that level is also a friend of mine. She hugged Heila again. Heila took a moment. She was overwhelmed. The genuine unrestrained goodness of the three of them amazed her. She knew the offers were not casually made. Not made without consideration or awareness of the implications and consequences. That much was obvious. It was their capacity to shift and embrace the moment that fascinated and impressed her. She knew that Biella and Ursula had plans, and that they had been willing to set aside their commitment to their plans, all for her. That was profound and telling. They were not acting blithely. They knew exactly what they were doing, but there was none of the hand-wringing and irrelevant agonizing or deliberating that Heila had always observed in others when decisions of import were made. This readiness to live, to immerse in the now, to not waste a precious second, this grabbed Heila at the very core. Heila shakily extended her hand towards Eluminia in the friendship gesture. She was overcome with emotion. Eluminia placed her one hand against Heila's, going with the gesture. Heila could not speak, she simply held her hand against Eluminia's as the tears streamed down her face. Most people did not make the gesture more than once or twice a year at the most. Sometimes only 3 in a decade, and here she had made it 3 times in the space of a few hours. And it had been profoundly returned all 3 times. It was a gift beyond imagining. Friendships on Heila's world were not only treasured, they were venerated. Heila's tears touched the others and brought tears to their eyes also. They all hugged Heila deeply. They sensed there was more to the release. Then Eluminia started laughing. A joyful merry delight of mirth. We are friends, new friends, and here we are sobbing like babies. She grabbed their hands. And the trees are about to start a great song. Come come, big babies, Eluminia cajoled playfully. They laughed with her and followed as she dragged them towards a massive branch connecting the great tree they were on, to another. I felt it on the way up. I came to tell you I arranged the free chat for tomorrow. Just seemed appropriate somehow. Eluminia's intuition was remarkable. It never failed to amaze Biella. Biella grinned at Heila. It is the way of our lives, she said softly, gently. It always seems improbable, unlikely, impossible, to us as well. It is a constant magic that flows, that we connect to, by being appropriate, in the greatest context. She left it there. More magic was evidently about to unfold. Come come. Here, Eluminia said eagerly. This is the best spot. It is beginning. It will take a while to build, enough to explain. She grinned, aware of the mystery she was presenting. A mischief in her eye. This is a special spot, and Nobelia is a special place. The new nobles do nothing just casually. They love art, all kinds of art. They love to take things to the maximum, to not leave anything out, or not done, when they can, Eluminia said enthusiastically. She swept her arms around herself, indicating the giant trees in the forest they carried on their branches. Listen, she entreated. They did as she bade. At first, for Ursula and Heila, they only heard the sounds of the forest, the wind through the giant trees. You have to tune your ears, Eluminia said. Biella smiled with anticipation. She had loved to watch this the first time. Heila and Ursula's faces lit up with delight and astonishment at the same time. Why? But, they exclaimed simultaneously. Eluminia was thrilled. She too loved this part. She joined in the laughter. There are some very sophisticated acoustics, sound properties, and a whole range of complicated technical factors involved. Many new nobles were involved in this project. Many still monitor it. What you hear are thousands of wind chimes. All sizes, from many different materials. The overwhelming majority are from wood. The non-wood chimes are in about the same ratio as one would find those elements in a tree. The wooden ones are from woods all over the ag. There are some extremely exotic chimes out there. But the magic is in how they work. Yes, they are wind chimes, but they aren't rung with a free-swinging pendulum moving in the wind. The ringer is an electromagnet and its movement is governed by the tree's movement, the part of the tree it is connected to. The smaller the chime, generally the further they are from the trunks and the huge branches. Those further out chimes will respond to the multiple movements. So if the trunk is swaying, it may set up a steady slow beat or rhythm, then the movement of the huge branches will be overlaid on top of that. Slightly faster and higher, and so on. Each layer of movement is differently represented and overlaid. Eluminia was enjoying herself. There was so much to this, so much magic and wonder. So much joy and marvel. Many have described what you are hearing, when you listen and tune in, that is, as a multitude of flying fairies laughing. To get you to hear it at all without it being a cacophony is part of the incredible design. First they set the sound in such a way that it blends with the forest and the trees. Then one has to deliberately shift attention to hear it. And when one does, as you have just heard, the effect is stupendous. It is done that way for the residents. They can choose to tune in or not. Then there is the attunement with all the other chimes. They are all synced to each other, within the maximum typical range of the sound of the chime. That is why every now and then one hears a chime that is like a solo. That would be when the sound is caught by the wind and our ear happens to be in its path. Eluminia chuckled at the thought. The sync is set so that the chimes feed off of each other. The actual sound itself, by way of the vibrations, affects the other chimes. So there is a kind of ripple effect, like waves in a pond. They will run across the forest and be added to from new wind gusts, amplified when the waves overlap, or be muted when the waves coincide to cancel each other out. That's why the sound is such an incredible surrounding experience. You hear sounds moving along, say, behind you. They pass and move away in front of you. But simultaneously there are sounds coming up from below, from the sides, moving towards you and away from you. You hear them respond to the other sounds. They form choruses, sometimes solos, sometimes it seems as if the entire forest is not only resonating with sound, but moving and dancing as well. It is not just the sounds themselves and the beautiful, gorgeous, spontaneous melodies, but the movements of those sounds. They go up, down, across, around and in any pattern of movement one can imagine. Eluminia gasped for breath. Her excitement for the topic grabbing hold of her. That still isn't the most incredible part, Eluminia enthused. They are set up in such a way that discordance is impossible. Discordance of not only the sounds but also the movements. Only discordance was avoided. The rest is pure magic. Well, my definition of magic. What's that you always say about magic, Biella? If you don't believe in magic, then, for heaven's sake, get your head read and broaden your definition. Biella said straight-faced. No, no. Eluminia started to say, then caught on. Very funny, she said in the cutest way possible, although she was not trying to be cute. Biella loved to tease Eluminia. It was a treat every time. Yes, yes, that. Except without the getting your head read part, she shot Biella a glare that had them all laughing. But really, Eluminia said, getting back to her topic. One of the new nobles that is involved in the technical aspects once explained it to me. He said that the complexity of the variables started to approach what happens in our brains. And there's more. Eluminia trailed off as if she had run out of energy. A very muted twinkle in her eye. Ursula and Heila were immersed in the sounds of the forest-wide symphony. Eluminia moved slightly, indicating with her eyes the exact spot she wanted Biella on. They moved as if they were just making themselves comfortable. Ursula and Heila adjusted accordingly, to maintain conversational distance. Eluminia nodded ever so slightly to herself, satisfied. She cocked her head, turning her face into the wind. It had picked up. Eluminia raised both her arms theatrically, like an impish conductor. She put tension into her arms, as if she was restraining some incredible force. Her arms quivered. Her face rapt with concentration. Biella stared fascinated. She had been here many times with Eluminia, but this was new to her. Ursula and Heila noticed Biella's surprise and interest and were even more fascinated. Eluminia strained against the invisible force, her head cocking to one side, then the other. It seemed the force was somehow connected to something she was listening to. "It's coming," she whispered. Her eyes were closed in rapt attention. Her legs started to tremble and shake. "It's coming," she said louder. Her entire body was shaking under the strain now. "It's coming," she shouted so loudly that some of the nearby chimes responded. She was shaking so fiercely now it seemed like she was going to get whipped away by the invincible forces any second. Biella was spellbound. It was enchanting. "It's here!" Eluminia yelled with such ferocity Biella almost took a step back. Eluminia raised her arms and stretched mightily, as high as she could above her. Then she crashed her arms down with all her might. At that exact moment the mightiest of mighty deep sonorous booms resounded across the forest from all sides. The sounds were so deep and powerful it literally rocked them where they stood. Eluminia was spent, exhausted, but she again cocked her head. Once more. This time she swirled, raised her arms high, straining with every fiber of her being and again whipped her arms down, and the incredible sounds of the great chimes again rung out, shaking their bodies. She shivered with joy as the sounds found her being. She vibrated to their sound. "Let go," Eluminia urged them, her eyes still closed. She laid her head back, arms wide, and let go. It could clearly be seen in her body. All tension flowed out. It was a marvel she could stand up tall. So entranced were the friends that they followed suit without thinking. "Feel, don't listen," Eluminia urged. They did so. This part Biella had experienced before. She gave herself over to the forest. To the feel of it. The rhythm of it. The vibration of it. She heard the chimes. All of them. From the tiniest faintest sounds to the large deep bass chimes. They were delicate now, compared to earlier. As if they were simply filling in the pauses between the singing of the giant chimes. They sounded again. Multiple deep long melodic sonorous notes this time. The start had been near them. The sounds, no song, it was more like a short phrase of a song than sounds. The song was picked up by another of the giant trees to their left. They could feel the branch sway in that direction as a mighty gust swirled that way. The wind was not as much fast as it was powerful. Like it had substance. Now the giant chimes to their left responded in song. Picking up the song, passing it along, adding to it. The song moved on, deeper among the great trees. They heard the other great trees adding to it. The song grew with each great tree it encountered. The song spread through the forest. Ripples splitting off from the main song, spreading back towards them. These in turn getting picked up by the smaller chimes, adding in their own accompaniment to the great song. Back and forth went the great song. The great trees seeming to add and respond with a will. Adding to the song on some occasions when it came by, leaving it on others. The wind flowed through the forest, its effect only on the physical movement of the trees now, and its own sound through them. The chimes no longer responded to the wind, or it seemed, to the movement of the trees. The movements were aligned, and flowed with the great song. But the song now had its own life. It was fed by the great trees. They breathed into the song. They sighed into the song. They drank the song. They responded, echoed, added, embellished, all through the deep sounds of the great chimes. The smaller chimes merely enhancing the magnificent voices of the giant trees in accompaniment. The song was moving quicker across the giant forest now. It swelled, building. It was moving in giant waves of sound, physically moving the leaves and small branches it passed. The great waves were moving first away from them, then closer. Gradually they had become the epicenter. The song intensified, so loud and huge now that everything else was silent by comparison. It was magnificently beautiful. It was as if all the emotions of the giant trees were finally released after having been pent up for ages. But it was pent-up love. For it was an enormous song of love. The waves of sound moved faster, each time coming closer and closer to their spot of honor. They felt a deep, deep rumbling. From below, it moved upward along the giant trees in unison to the giant waves of sound that were now closing in on them with each increasing crescendo to the great song. Then the great rumbling and the song hit them. Time collapsed. They vibrated in place. They literally had no control now. The great song had enveloped them. They were in its heart now. They were on the exact spot of a massive standing wave of sound fed by the songs from all of the great trees. They had all joined in now. The sounds shivered the very air around them, fed melodiously by the great trees as each one added their particular love to the song. They were singing to the earth. A love so deep, so loving. The love could be felt all the way down into the earth, deep, deep into the massive roots of the great trees. The song had completely enveloped the four friends. There was no thinking now, only feeling. Even if they had wanted to, it would have been near impossible, as the electromagnetic field that had been created on the spot they were standing was like a thought-dampening field. The effect on the women was beyond description. They were pure feeling now. Feeling the love of the great trees. Their love for the earth, for the wind, for the birds, the animals, the insects, the rain, the people that lived in the trees, everything they could feel, including their love for the four of them. The four friends, now conjoined, could feel the individual parts, though it was all one whole. The song was so beautiful, so exquisite, it moved them so much, that all they could do to bear the immense beauty and love of it, was yell. They yelled at the tops of their voices with an abandon like never before. There was no thought involved. Their bodies were simply responding to the deep, deep love that kept coming and coming through the great song. Time was nowhere. They experienced infinity, for they were pure feeling within the great song. They lived through cycles of growth, emerging as young saplings, some falling away to join those that remained from below, adding themselves back in again. Each time as more fell away, the remaining became stronger, to merge finally into the great trees. They felt the guidance of the humans, the loving care of the balance. The joy at the addition to their strength by the way the humans guided the growing. Then the love intensified. It did not seem possible, but it did. The humans were doing what was not known, it was incomprehensible. The great trees sang of the watching, of the waiting. Then, the joy flooded from the trees, the joyous great day. The great day, the great wind came again. They could feel the immense love of the great trees for the great wind. But on the great day there was a difference. On that day the great trees could sing. They had been given great voice. They had small voice amongst their roots. That was how they guided the young ones, nourished each other, directed each other to the water and the food they needed. That was how they shared. But on the great day their little voices became great voices. Voices they could feel. Great voices that responded to others. At first they had been clumsy in their singing. They did not yet understand. But over many, many cycles they had learned. With each great wind they added to the song. Now it was a song of pure love and beauty. They sang and they sang and they sang. They would sing as long as the great wind moved them to sing. Eventually, or so it seemed, the great wind died down and the four friends found themselves in relative silence. After that anything would seem quiet. In actuality it had been minutes only, but the timelessness of the experience would forever say otherwise inside them. It took them much longer to compose themselves than the experience had actually been. They were breathing in long deep breaths, like they were in a deep sleep. It was a phenomenal feeling, like it was what breathing was, in its essence. They had no tension in their bodies other than what was critically needed. And that was so minuscule it was essentially noticeable. The effect was magical. They felt impossible. Eluminia was the first to speak. Their minds started to come back online. They felt connected, to the forest and to the giant trees. It was a bond they would have forever. Their mind's innate need for understanding kicked in. Eluminia held up her hand, tenderly. "I will explain," she said gently, setting them at ease. Biella had been through the experience before, but not quite like this. And she had some questions of her own. "Look," Eluminia said, pointing to the top part of the joint trunk of the nearest great tree. "This is the only time one can see them clearly. The vibrations have knocked away most of what usually covers them. The great chimes, there. Dart. Hanging from underneath the great crown were what at first appeared to be a group of tree trunks. But then the arrangement could be seen. These would ordinarily have been very large trees, and had been on the worlds they had come from. The great chimes were made from the hollowed-out trunks of these large trees. Each great tree has quite a few of these," Eluminia explained. "What we experienced, the little voice. That is an actual real thing. In most forests there is rudimentary communication between the trees. What we experienced all happens naturally. What the new nobles did here was connect the great chimes to that system. And set it up so that when the great wind comes, the movements of the roots sound the chimes. For that is the only time that the great trees truly move sufficiently to affect their roots. They translated this all into the great chimes. It's all incredibly complex, but nothing truly magical about it. Except the will to actually do it." Eluminia smiled in wonder. She loved the new nobles so. "The great winds are a particularly dense wind, as you probably felt. They don't come around all that often. A few times a year at most, even skipping some years. It is why I postpone the free chat. No one can say for sure when the great winds will come. I have been monitoring and studying them for many years. I gave up on the scientific part of predicting when they will come. It was too inaccurate. I started to trust my intuition. I became more and more attuned. Then I learned that dance." Eluminia laughed with joyful abandon, giving Biella a deliciously fun look. "Well, I didn't have to do it quite like that. I was exaggerating tremendously. A little performance for theatrical effect and mainly to tease Biella a bit." She chuckled delightfully. I had her quite puzzled. "It isn't easy to do, you know," she said conspiratorially to Ursula and Heila. Biella laughed delightedly. "Yes, I was mesmerized and completely confused. It was exquisite, you had me completely fooled." She laughed happily, fully appreciating what Eluminia had done. "You mean there was no invisible force?" Ursula asked incredulously. "Nope," Eluminia grinned mischievously. "I was hamming it up for all I was worth." She giggled deliciously. "But it is a fantastic workout. And an amazing dance in itself." She was enjoying herself. It was seldom that she had been able to tease Biella so extensively. "And there's more." "Of course," Biella and Ursula said simultaneously in what was their refrain. Nora and Aki had started this, and it had caught on. "There is always more," they finished together with big grins. Eluminia had their interest. "I do have to concentrate and tune in completely to my intuition, to an inner feeling, an inner rumbling. A minuscule echo of what we felt. It is a kind of vibration from the earth. The dance helps for that. I have been able to pinpoint where the epicenter will be before. It's never in the same place, otherwise we would have a crowd here. There are small groups all across the great branches hoping to be at the heart of the great song. What we experienced will be felt all over the great forest, with varying degrees of intensity. I have been able to figure out the epicenter. Or I should say it is a simple knowing. When I get a hint of a great wind approaching and I am certain that it is definitely coming here, then I just know where the epicenter is going to be. The timing is a different matter. The dance was so I had some leeway with the timing. And besides, you have to admit, it was exciting when I seemingly made the sound happen with my arms, yes." Eluminia giggled happily. "Yes, it was fantastic," Heila said, Ursula nodding in agreement. "I thought you were some high priestess of the trees or something," Heila smiled. "It was very impressive. Thank you. It was an exquisite experience. No less diminished now." Emotion surged in Heila. "And," prompted Ursula, feeling there was something more. "Hee hee," Eluminia said with fun. Yes, I had another goal in mind as well. I don't know so much about the two of you. Well, Ursula, you a bit I suspect, maybe, but Biella I know for sure can be a bit much in her head. I wanted to move her, and well, you two also. I wanted to get her completely out of herself for a change. She grinned at Biella. And it worked great. I had her so confused she didn't know what to think, and that was enough to allow the magic of the song to take over. Wasn't it, Biella? Eluminia asked with ever the tiniest trace of potential doubt. It was the humility of the new nobles. They never took anything for granted, no matter how sure they may seem. Yes, indeed. It helped tremendously. I experienced the great song the way you related to me you did. Thank you, Angel. Biella hugged Eluminia in an embrace of love. Their friendship was something special indeed. What a fantastic business. Biella said. You were magnificent. Thank you, thank you. Heila and Ursula hugged Eluminia as well, thanking her. No trace of any hesitancy or doubt of appropriateness remained. That was all gone, they were friends now like few would ever be. It was as if Heila's friendship gesture had taken on a life of its own, and had become magnified and incorporated into them by their shared experience of the great song. For not only had they felt the trees' feeling of them, but also, through the great trees, they had felt each other. It was an intimacy like no other. Did I leave anything out? Eluminia asked. They shook their heads. Good, for we are in for a small treat. A little wind is coming, much like an aftershock. The little wind will set off the great chimes, but only as chimes now. The little wind is not strong enough to move the great trees all the way to their roots. But the music. Biella, Ursula, Heila and Eluminia were entranced once more by the deep sonorous booming of the chimes. The way they overlapped, resonated with each other, flowing and responding to each other. The music of it was superb, the smaller chimes sounding their delightful accompaniment. All across Tree City the joyful and melodious sounds could be heard, refreshing and renewing, a rain of glorious sound. But suddenly there was a rapid gonging, like one of the trees had become excited. It was a fun sound, full of naughtiness, if such a thing could be imagined from a great tree. The women stood baffled, intrigued by the mystery when a figure scampering up the great trunk caught their eye. It was Dreamdeer. She was laughing joyfully, with abandon. And she seemed to be in a big hurry. How she managed to climb that fast was a marvel. She was like a human monkey. Her joy had energized her, and, it seemed, the great chimes. She scooted over to where they were and squeezed right into the middle of them. Then she completely relaxed and looked out into the trees, matching their still lingering mood of wonder. She was using them as camouflage, blending in with them. It had been she that had gone and rung one of the great chimes by hand. It was all the girls could do to maintain their expressions, for if they had broken out into laughter they would have given away that something was up. They played along with Dream, delighting in her innocent mischief and joy. Can't keep a straight face, Dreamdeer said. This all is wonderful and fun. Yee. Dream said it with a pronounced E sound, it seemed to add to the fun of it. So awesome, Biella simply said, enjoying Dream's joy. Yes. Happy. And with that she took off in a delighted run, heedless of the heights or the wind. Of course nothing will happen to Dreamdeer if they knew she was here, and there is no one really to chase her. It is not that kind of a world or society, but that doesn't matter to wonderful Dreamdeer. She plays anyway, cause it's just pure joyful mischief. It is the expression of her pure and innocent heart, Biella said with a fond smile, watching Dream weave her way through branches on the edge of the crown. It is a profoundly joyful privilege, the responsibility and care of enjoying, delighting, and absorbing the wonder that is the innocent, Biella said. It is a deep, deep wish of mine that the innocent know how much difference they make. How important they are to the universe. The children of the universe hold it all together, and on most worlds no one really knows that. On some worlds they struggled, not much so now, as it is one of the consequences of the new nobility. Many found a home in the new nobility, or in some way that is connected to them. The new nobility redefined their purpose and function in society. They showed, illustrated and demonstrated, many new and different ways to be. How those ways, which were completely new to most societies, were highly beneficial to them. Even though they were completely unconventional and had not been considered beneficial. They would not have realized this without the examples the new nobility set. They provided an awareness of the enormous value the innocents had for societies. Biella stepped to the edge of a huge branch. "You see how important she is," Biella said to the trees, to the world. "She shows other ways of being." It was a reminder of the magic of the innocent. Biella cast her words into the wind, into the sounds of the great chimes. She let them be carried across the world, across the universe. Biella had a deep reverence in her heart for the innocent. They touched her so completely, so fully. The innocent motivated her, inspired her. She had long ago resolved to maintain her own innocence, no matter what. She would not let go of it. No matter how mightily she strove for sophistication. No matter that she had acquired a large measure of that sophistication, she would maintain her innocence. And she had. Her friends such as Dreamdeer and Eluminia, who had such powerful innocent sides, had helped her enormously with that exquisite balance that she maintained. "You flow through me, Dreamdeer, your dream merges with my dream," Biella called out into the wind. Eluminia moved alongside and added to Biella's gesture, "You flow through me, Dreamdeer, your dream merges with my dream," she too called to the wind of the world. Ursula and Heila were stirred by this gesture. They had never experienced anything like it at all. This throwing out a profoundly earnest intent onto the waves and winds of the world. It was a gesture that rearranged them inside. Ursula took a small step closer to the edge. She tried to think of what would be appropriate to say. Her mind was flowing, almost tumbling along with the wind and the sounds of the great chimes. She started to say something she had thought would be relevant, but the wind snatched it from her before she could utter a sound. Then it fell from her, from somewhere unknown to her. She said, "To all the innocents I may meet, to all the innocents I will meet, to all the innocents I have met, and did not recognize or acknowledge for your profound example of being, I offer my sincerest apologies. And my heartfelt resolve to make up for my ignorance. I too shall cherish you." She stepped back into the group, enfolding herself into their love and support. Grateful for the comfort. Heila stepped to the edge now. She stepped right to the very edge, leaning over it into the wind, spreading her arms wide. A gesture of complete trust that the wind would sustain her precarious balance. "Love!" she shouted at the wind. She shouted with such intensity that the great chimes responded. A deep, huge simultaneous boom came up from behind her and pressed her even deeper into the oncoming wind. The wind rushed fiercely to balance her. Her gesture of innocent trust was magnificent. "I will love the innocent with all my heart. The innocent will all be friends of my heart," she said with an almost desperate sincerity. A great gust of power came and blew Heila from the edge into the arms of her friends. They caught her and hugged her tightly, tightly to their hearts. Her grand gesture of abandon had moved them to a place of reverence. A place of grace. A place where the inordinate became manifest. Next chapter, Oinal and the Anomalies.